Hey there, welcome, beloved of God, because that's what you are. Welcome to this video, and of course we will continue with our series, our extensive series called The Glorious and Powerful Return of Jesus Christ. Let's dive in the slides. Well, this was the last one, as if I'm not mistaken. So let's continue. So we've seen with the previous video, ending of the previous video in this slide, that the NASB Habakkuk 3 verse. By the way, I've seen that the name Habakkuk is pronounced two ways, either Habakkuk or Habakkuk. So I don't know which one you are preferring, doesn't matter. I use Habakkuk, so just for your information. And you see that here it says he has rays flashing from his hand, while another translation, it's not the concordant version, says he has gleams shining from his hand. I think it's just a kind of a synonym. It's more or less the same thing. You can see before you how it will look like. That's the most important thing. So we see also the whole theme around the warrior, and of course executing the indignation on behalf of his God and Father. That's what you read all the time, and that's the most prevalent underlying theme of the beginning stage of Jesus' parousia with us on earth, of course. So let's continue because we are going forth in the same theme and the same atmosphere. So let's see. Now Habakkuk 3 verse 9 through 12. You were rending the earth with streams. The mountains saw you and were travailing. Yes, this is a bit poetic language, but you can imagine that there will be a literal earthquake and the mountains will be literally shaken in that sense. So it is not far-fetched from a literal meaning. Let's continue. The storm of waters, it overflowed. The abyss sounded forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. Sun and moon stood still in their residence at the light of your arrows as they flew, at the brightness of the flashing of your spear. With indignation you are marching through the earth. In anger you are threshing the nations. Zechariah 14 verse 12. And this shall come to be the stroke with which Yahweh shall strike all the peoples who rallied their hosts against Jerusalem. Their flesh will putrefy while they are standing on their feet, and their eyes, they shall be putrefied in their holes, and their tongue, it shall be putrefied in their mouths. Wow. We already went through these passages, and we are going to go repeatedly through some other passages also, but it's just to highlight it from a different angle, and this is the angle specifically the underlying theme of the indignation of God. So we continue. Revelation 16 verse 17 through 18, also been through, of course. And the seventh messenger pours out his bowl on the air. And a loud voice came out of the temple of God saying, "It has occurred." And lightnings and voices and thunders occurred. And a great earthquake occurred, such as did not occur since mankind came to be on the earth. Of such proportions was the quake, and so great. So this is going to be the greatest one ever, and there will never be such an earthquake anymore. And that is after or at the same moment of Armageddon. So that's the end of God's indignation, so to speak. Let's continue Revelation. 16 verse 19 through 21. And the great city, that's Jerusalem, came to be divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fall. Just stop here again, just like the previous time. Again, ponder on it, consider it, because it will happen literally. All the cities of the world on this earth will fall. They will be totally destroyed. Everyone except Jerusalem. Okay. And Babylon the Great is brought to remembrance in the sight of God, to give her the cup of the wine of the fury of his indignation. It will be totally and utterly burned up. Babylon as the beginning stage of this 3rd eon on the leadership of Nimrod with regard to false idolatry, so-called false idols. That it started with Babylon and it will end with Babylon the Great, same city. And every island fled, and the mountains were not found anymore. And hail, large as a talent weight, is descending out of heaven on mankind. And man blasphemed God as a result of the calamity of hail. For great is its calamity, tremendous. Remember what a talent weight is? How many pounds? It is 75 pounds or 35 kilograms. And this is, by the way, I've looked it up, this is on the low side. There are other passages on the internet that indicate higher weights, but I'm just taking this one. Excuse me. Okay, we continue. We are now coming from indignation of God to the warrior, the way he will, will put himself forth, so to speak, as the warrior, the divine warrior. During his triumphant procession, Jesus will defeat his foes as he encounters them, a pattern that will persist throughout the march and reach its climax, of course, in Jerusalem, on the mountain of Zion, Mount Zion. A little while later, after the crowning ceremony in heaven by his God and Father, the beast, the false prophet, and the majority of their forces will meet their demise as he comes back from heaven on that white horse. Remember? With a blood-soaked robe. This recurring theme is emphasized in various descriptions of the Lord himself, and in prophecies regarding his forthcoming deliverance. Let's take a look at those passages. Deuteronomy 33, we start again with the blessing of Moses. Verse 29. Happy are you, Israel. Who is like you? A people saved by Yahweh, the shield of your help, who is also the sword of your augustness. Your enemies shall dissimulate submission to you, yet you shall tread on their high places. And I would add for myself, and bring those high places low to the ground. Scatter them. Psalm 68 verse 1 and 2. Elohim shall arise. Remember what it means, right? Come into action. His enemies shall be scattered, and those hating him shall flee from his presence. Like the whisking away of smoke shall they be whisked away. Like the melting of wax from the face of fire, so shall the wicked perish from the presence of Elohim. Do you see it before you, dear watcher? Do you see that? Wow. We continue. Psalm 68 verse 21 through 23 and verse 30. Yeah, Elohim himself shall transfix the head of his enemies. the hairy scalp of him who walks in his guilty acts. Yahweh has said, I shall restore from Bashan. I shall restore from the swamps of the sea, or the swamps of the sea, that you may bathe your foot in blood, and the tongue of your curse may have its assignment of the enemies. Dissipate the peoples who are delighting in attacks. Oh yes, they will be dissipated. So this is another, I would say, warrior cry. We continue. Habakkuk 3 verse 12 through 14. Again, the warrior. With indignation you are marching through the earth. In anger you are threshing the nations. You transfix the head of the house of the wicked one, making him naked from the foundation or the thigh unto the neck. You pierce the head of his hordes with his own rods. Can you see that? Wow. And this is again not just naked, I think, where it is laying him open, cutting his skin open from the foundation or the thigh unto the neck. Isaiah 35 verse 4. Say to those with hastening hearts, be steadfast, do not fear. Behold, your Elohim with vengeance he shall come. With the requital of Elohim, he himself shall come and save you. Isaiah 63 verse 1. Who is this coming from humanity, Isaiah asks, with wine-dyed garments from the vintage? This is one effulgent in his clothing, marching in his great figure. It is I, speaking in righteousness, says Jesus, abundant to save. And verse 3 and 4, the winepress, says Jesus, I have trod by myself, and from the peoples there was no man with me. I tread them in my anger, and tramp them down in my fury, and their lifeblood splatters on my garments, and all my clothing I have sullied. For the day of vengeance came on them, and the year of my redeemed has come. Again, just to reiterate, the year of my redeemed is that Sabbath year wherein Israel will find peace and solace and rest from the toils and the persecutions of the great tribulation. When Jesus is with them, his parousia. Verse 5 and 6 of Isaiah 63. When I look, there is no helper. When I am appalled, there is no supporter. Yet my own arm is saving for me, and my own fury, it supports me. And I trample peoples in my anger, and make them drunk in my fury, and I bring down to the earth their lifeblood. Zechariah 12 verse 9. And it will come to be in that day, I shall seek to exterminate all the nations coming against Jerusalem. And Zechariah 14 verse 3. Then Yahweh will go forth and fight against those nations as when he fights in a day of attack. Let's look at another sub-theme, the people of Israel. It is interesting to note that one of the most repeated reasons given as to why Jesus will judge the nations is specifically because of their mistreatment of his people, Israel. Obviously, that is the main reason for sure. Let's take a look at this sub-theme. Joel 3 verse 2. I will also convene all the nations and bring them down to the vale of Jehoshaphat. And I will enter into judgment with them there concerning my people, and my allotment Israel, whom they disperse among the nations, and my land which they also, I add that, apportion, because that will happen in Israel. I think there will be like an Israel-Palestinian solution, so to speak. Let's see what will happen, of course. But they will apportion the land. By the way, they have already done it in a certain way. Okay, we continue. Isaiah 34, verse 8. For a day of vengeance has Yahweh, a year of repayments for Zion's cause. Oh yes, they will receive rewards. Isaiah 60, verse 12. For the nation and the kingdom that shall not serve you shall perish, and those nations shall be wasted, wasted. Isaiah 60, verse 14. So they come to you bowing down. That will be literally. All the sons of those who humiliated you, and they bow down at the soles of your feet. All those who spurned you, and they shall call and they call you city of Yahweh, Zion of the Holy One of Israel. So they will get their due, so to speak. Isaiah 4, verse 2 and 3 and 5 and 6. In that day the shimmering of Yahweh shall come to be for stateliness and for glory, and the face of the land for augustness and for beauty. For the delivered of Israel and Judah, for them it will be the case. And it will come to be that the remnant in Zion and the rest in Jerusalem, it shall be said of them, holy, all who are written for life in Jerusalem. Then he will come, and there will be over every side of Mount Zion and over all its common lands a cloud by day and smoke and the brightness of a blazing fire by night. For over all the glory will be a canopy and a booth. It shall be for shade by day and from scorching heat, and for refuge and for concealment from storm and from rain. That's how it will be in those days in the coming future. Let's look at this theme, liberating the captives, because that is also an important one at Jesus' return and parousia. As Jesus and his armies march toward Israel, they will also free a mighty host of those among Israel who had been prisoners of war. Psalm 102, verse 19 through 21. For he will gaze from his sanctuary on high, Yahweh from the heavens to the earth he will look down, to hear the groaning of the prisoner, to unloose the sons of death, so that the name of Yahweh may be recounted in Zion and his praise in Jerusalem. Psalm 146, verse 5 through 7. Happy is he who has the El of I start again. Happy is he who has the El of Jacob as his help. His hopefulness is set on Yahweh his Elohim, maker of the heavens and earth, the sea and all that is in them, the guardian of truth for the eon. He is the one executing right judgment for those being exploited, the one giving bread to the famished, Yahweh letting loose those who are bound. Joel 3 verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall reverse the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. Zephaniah 2 verse 7. For Yahweh their Elohim shall visit them and will reverse their captivity. You see how, I would say, packed this theme is of the wonderful, glorious and powerful return of Jesus. It will be a demonstration and a display of great dominion, great rulership, but also great great decisiveness. Let me put it like that. So we continue. We are, of course, now at the latter stages of this whole study. So after this study, as I already said, there will be a very short a mini series of 2 or maybe max 3 videos about the sign of the Son of Mankind. What is that sign actually? Okay, let's continue. Liberating the captives. Isaiah 61 verse 1 and 2. The Spirit of my Lord Yahweh is on me, because Yahweh anoints me to bear tidings to the humble. He sends me to bind up the broken of heart, to herald to captives liberty, and to the sightless unclosed eyes, and to the bound emancipation, to herald an acceptable year for Yahweh, and the day of vengeance for our Elohim, to comfort all mourners. One small remark here. You recognize this passage maybe. In Luke 4, Jesus, at the beginning of his ministry, he cites this passage. So he reads everything over here, also here, to herald an acceptable year for Yahweh. And after this comma, he closes the scroll. He rolls up the scroll and he gives it back to the leadership. And everybody is looking intently at him. Why? Because, and that's in Luke, you can read that in Luke 4, I think verse 17, I'm not sure. But everybody is looking intently at him after he closes the scroll, because they accept that this passage is continuing with, and the day of vengeance for our Elohim, to comfort all mourners. But he left that out at his first coming. Think about it. That is what is meant by what is in the King James, rightly divide the word of truth, or in the concordant version, correctly cutting the word of truth. This is what Jesus did. This, a day of vengeance, was not at hand back then, 2,000 years ago, in his first coming, so to speak. So, think about it. We continue with liberating the captives. Jeremiah 30 verse 3. For behold, the days are coming, offering is Yahweh, when I will reverse the captivity of my people Israel and Judah, says Yahweh, and I will restore them to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they will tenant it. Luke 21 verse 24. And they shall be falling by the edge of the sword, and shall be led into captivity into all nations. This is Israel, of course. And Jerusalem shall be trodden by the nations until the eras of the nations may be fulfilled. Do you remember what the eras of the nations pertain to? Do you remember? I went through it in a recent series. I think last year I went through the eras of the nations, but recently this year I went through a series called The End Times Beyond the Eras of the Nations. It is a specific terminology, specific expression indicating a specific period. When did it start? Do you remember? Let me enlighten you if that's not the case, if you didn't remember. It started with the vacation, or the emptiness of the throne of David. So it started when Nebuchadnezzar, with his Babylonian armies, invaded Jerusalem and totally destroyed the temple and the palace, etc., and the throne of David. So they took the king prisoner, and that from that moment there was no one from the bloodline of David anymore. King still today, no king of the bloodline of David in Israel. And when will it stop? When Jesus will be crowned king, and he will sit on the throne of his father David. And that is when the eras of the nations end. Remember, so from the time of Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, from that time the nations are now, let's say, sitting on the throne. Let me put it like that, symbolically. And also the nations are governing the earth in that sense. Okay, we continue. The true triumphant entry, where, of course, in Jerusalem. Let's read. Upon Jesus' arrival in Jerusalem, a momentous triumphal entry into the city will unfold, and they will enter, by the way, through the Golden Gate. That's what is called the Golden Gate at the east of Jerusalem. And that's a separate story, because let me just mention it after this slide. Let's continue. Mirroring the initial triumphal entry, there will be exuberant singing, worship, and joyous festivities culminating in a magnificent celebration as the grand procession enters Zion. The gates of Jerusalem will swing open to welcome the arrival of the long anticipated Messiah. Oh boy, for sure long anticipated. Matthew 23:39. For I am saying to you, Jesus is talking here, you may by no means be perceiving me henceforth, till you should be saying, blessed is he who is coming in the name of the Lord. So, one little remark with regard to the entry into Jerusalem. As I said, it will be through the Golden Gate. Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't know that the video was... Oh my goodness. Terrible. I'm sorry. I didn't even think of the time. Well, I'm going to tell the story next time. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to equal it a little bit. Well, at least I'm thanking you for your attention, for watching this video, and hope to see you next time. Then you will hear a nice and funny story. Bye-bye.